Welcome to the new unit comparisons and analysis for our brand new beautiful beast units. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys are from the Twitch community, say hello. And those on YouTube, feel free to say hello as well in the comments. You can join in the community as well. If you're completely new to this sort of thing, and I know some people are, so I want to clear the air on this. This type of video is meant to give you some perspective, some ideas, and just to kind of rationalize everything around these new units on whether you, ultimately should pull them or how you can use them. I do end up doing comparisons with these brand new units with older units in the summoning pools. The thing is, these guys are really unique, so it's going to be more difficult. I'm actually going to more focus upon what they bring to the game and how you can use them, and maybe some slight comparisons, at least in the terms of role. Although it will be not as simple as saying you can just use this unit and do the same thing, because there's a lot of factors that go into this, specifically the transformation mechanics, that some of them are flyers, availability. There's a lot of factors that go in that make this difficult to compare units, but I'll still give you some perspective in terms of role and ability that way. Also, I keep the unit stats on the right image here, and I show the built units on the left. I try to keep everything as a F2P perspective, meaning like low resources. I'm not expecting to have distant counter on everything or crazy resource investment. It's mostly what's in the 3 and 4 star pool, so you can expect that seeing through the video. With all that said, let's jump into it. At the end of it, I'm going to go through the mathematics and kind of summarize the banner. So, first up is Tibarn. Tibarn, as expected from the trailer, he has extremely low res, really good attack, like actually really good attack. His speed is okay, and his defense is really good. His speed being the way it is actually fine because of the interaction between Hawk King Claw and Sturdy Impact. Sturdy Impact denying the enemy double, and Hawk King Claw, as long as he attacks into a unit that has 100% HP, guarantees his own double. So that's kind of like what you're going for here. Honestly, the dude is ready to go on the left, as you can see in his build there. It pretty much just has a super high attack stat. His whole kit is super synergistic. You don't really have to do anything to make him stand out. It really is built out of the box. The only thing I kind of suggest is, since he has Draconic Aura, you can give him Heavy Blade, and on his second attack, he really gets a lot of damage out of Draconic Aura, especially when he's buffed by even Attack Wave, Sturdy Impact going into it, Hawk King Claw, all these like crazy buffs involved, gives him like a 25 to 30 damage nuke easily with Draconic Aura, so it secures most kills that way. Tibarn is really like a big, good player phase nuke. Now, if you don't want to use Draconic Aura and you just want to take advantage of the mobility of flyers, then that's why you would maybe consider Gale Force as an alternative to that. But I think maybe just having your nukes on every turn is important. Now, I want to give a special mention to Shove, which you will consistently see. I think this is where you should use Shove. I think up to this point in 2019 of 2 years, you want Shove, okay? And the reason for it is, if you're using him on a team that's not fully beast and you want to give him positional skill, you don't want reposition, you don't want swap, you don't want pivot, you don't want drawback. So what positional skill do you use to make sure you get your transformation the next turn? Well, it's either Shove or Smite, pretty much. However, I think Shove is a bit better, so you can at least keep a two distance position with the other unit in case it's running a drive or it's running like a tactic skill for the next turn. Smite can be used to play aggressively on other units, but Shove can be like, hey, go away a little bit from the other way, and you can use it this way to make sure the transform mechanics are still intact. So if you're going to use Shove, I think these are the units to use it with, honestly speaking. So that's notably there. Now, in terms of IV choices, it doesn't really matter. Like, the Bane is not so relevant, but I think, especially come February update, the attack boon is what's important, so you can scale off of using something like Heavy Blade. So, with that being said, I don't really think you need to change much in Tibarn. You can give him, like, Gale Force, and that's as good as he gets. However, I want to compare him to Ares, and the reason I chose Ares is because they actually have pretty similar stat spreads, and they both have 3 movement mobility, both of them, because when Tibarn is moving 3 spaces. Akariss, like a red cav, can also do the same thing. So if you look at their stat spreads, they're actually very similar. Again, I've chosen a pretty budget build with Akariss. You pretty much just get him into Vantage Rage and do a lot of damage with Brazen Attack Defense and Brazen Attack Res. That's pretty much the way to do it. I think once Brazen Attack Defense Seal becomes a reality, then Bonfire is going to be his better special, especially once you give him buffs like Hone Cav or something. So in terms of like a good solid nuke on both phases, Akariss actually does it better on both phases. Assuming the unit that attacks him into him isn't ranged, then Akariss kind of fulfills a similar high movement nuke player phase, dual phase kind of role, especially once he's in that vantage range. That's pretty much as close as I think it gets to a comparison to Tibarn. But yeah, Tibarn's going to do different things because he's not limited by trees, chasms, other annoying things that cavalry just can't traverse over. When it comes to team comp creation though, Akariss is, I'm going to say, a little bit more flexible. Like it's easier to get cavalry units, it's easier to get home cavalry, and you know, like using Tibarn, you're going to have to pull the full set of the banner to really make it work. So I think Akariss is kind of the better option if you're trying to actually create a whole team comp around him. Next up is going to be Leanne, and I think Leanne is interesting. So we don't have many colorless dancers in the game right now. Honestly, the only other one we have in the whole game is, I believe, Hoshiden Summer Xander, and Performing Arts Olivia. And these are both infantry units. They also can't move 3 spaces and they can't fly. So there's a lot of advantages Leanne brings to the table, and her stat spread is somewhat similar to Olivia. Like, it's fairly similar, but Leanne is really cool because her stat spread lets her support properly as a singer. The thing I don't really like too much about both Leanne and Racin, what I'll mention later, is they really don't fit into team comps well. You are really not taking advantage of the fact that they can't really use their 3 movement mobility that well without kind of making awkward plays. Like if you're going to have a unit beside and to sing, and then you sing them just to like attack again, and Leanne is beside, and you never really know if you need the mobility to run or if you need the mobility to maybe dance another unit or something. So that's going to be the biggest weakness that I see with using either Leanne or Racin. In terms of combat, they're not really going to be doing that either, not with a 27 attack stat, but you can do some cool things. So let's take a look. If you're going to use her on a mixed team comp, which is what I would recommend doing, so you don't run into those awkward I'm beside you kind of situations. I'm talking about non-beast units, of course, or non-dragons. So they do shine if you use them with dragons. They do shine if you use them with beasts. But if you choose not to do that with some of the invested units you may already have, then use stuff like Attack Tactic in the sea or Guidance in the seal. Yeah, again, you'll still come into situations where it's not so good, because obviously when someone guidance ends, maybe you're not going to get transformation next turn. That's the only issue. Honestly, when it comes to like specials or anything like that, the A skill, they're not supposed to fight, so you might as well make sure that if they do take hits, they survive. And since they're flyers, IL shield's needed, Sacred Cow might as well reduce more damage. In fact, something like Escutcheon might work as well. I just don't see these units entering combat and getting away with like surviving. You know, like if you use them in Abyssals, good luck. You use them in any of the arena style content, they're not going to be killing many things, especially when Leanne is colorless and doesn't have any advantageous matchups. So compared to like Racin, at least he can do some fighting against, like, let's say some blue units with TA. Like that's a choice that at least he has. Leanne, oof. But that's also a good thing because you take neutral damage. Moving on, if you do happen to use her with beasts, you pretty much can keep her base kit. She's pretty much ready to go out of the box. You don't really have to do anything with her. You know, flyer formation. Most of the beasts are flyers. I mean, we got Naesala, we got Tibarn, Leanne herself is a flyer. So you already got like a good, like if you use Racin, for instance, you pretty much have a full colored flying beast team already. So you don't really need to change much. Her base kit's good to go. Give her IO Shield, Sacred Cow, and that's pretty much it. I think like the mirror stance definitely should be thrown away. That's like what she comes with. I just don't, like I said, don't have these units fight. It's not going to work out. Earth Dance is there because, well, she doesn't buff it, so you might as well. Fortified Defense is also another option if you want to take advantage of starting turn kind of thing. Moving on, she does have good res. So yeah, if you want to take advantage of that, 37 res with the boon is insane. Like, that's really good. Once you consider merges into that, it's up to 41. You know, if you gave her Fury, it's 44 res. So that's a really, really good res stat. In fact, maybe if once you take away like the Bane, she could potentially be a good distant counter user with like ploys and such, and just take on mages really well. she's still gonna struggle. I think you would need like Hone Flyers or Hone Beast to hit her to really do that sort of combat. But at least she's capable of taking on some magic damage, because like 73 bulk is nothing to ignore. It's pretty good, and her speed stat's totally respectable. Okay, and finally, like I mentioned, the only real comparison in terms of stats that we have is PA Olivia, who, if you happen to have, can kind of do the same role. I would say even more consistently than Leanne. So if you have PA Olivia, get her off the bench. If you feel like you need a colorless dancer, she's not too bad. She can also do some combat just by the nature of having a flexible weapon, which is Barb Shuriken. Heron Wing doesn't really give you much, but some healing, which is kind of cool. But like, some situations that's not really useful. Like if you're having a one kind of hit match, like Arena Assault, where it's like, you know, you just need your units to win fights. The healing doesn't really matter too much unless you have a carry unit. So in contrast, Barb Shuriken, you know, can lower cooldown of something like Luna, which really helps dancers out. And you use, you know, good old Fury, Desperation, Flashing Blade, and you give yourself some pretty consistent damage with her. Of course, if you want her to enter Fury, Desperation range, you hit units that don't retaliate, or you hit some mages, and she's good to go. So that's as close as it gets. Not really going to be anything comparable. So if you don't have either Olivia or Leanne, and you think you can use them well, then they're going to be good choices. I'm personally really interested in Leanne. I think she's really cool. Okay, moving on. We have Racin. All right, guys, I want to show you the ultimate build for Racin. Prepare yourself. All right, so if you want to truly take advantage of this man and his beautifulness, all you got to do is swap out his Sing for Smite. Make sure you get him a minus HP Bane before the February update. Don't merge him. Give him Earth Boost, some Panic Ploys, and make sure you take advantage of that 3 movement from Heron form by giving him Pass. Okay, no, but like on a serious note, I don't really see Racin as too useful of a unit just because of his limitations in putting him into a lot of team comps. He's only really gonna shine in like Dragon team comps or Beast team comps where he fills out a color role and possibly take on some units. And that's the key word, possibly take on some key units. So the dude is gonna wanna run like Fury or TA as what you can see. And he's gonna win some matchups because at least he has a defense stat unlike his sister Leanne. And his attack stat's still pretty poop. Like, it's not that good. And honestly, it's just not going to work out too well. Like, this is his role. Like, try to kill some blue units who are weak. Like, go find the enemy blue dancer. You see that Legendary Azura over there, Racin? Go get her. That's pretty much what I see you doing with Racin. Because otherwise, the dude is meant to support. He's a singer like all the other ones. And he has low stats as a result of being a singer. And because he's just green and he's a singer and a beast, it's just going to be hard to fit him into some team comps. On top of that, he's likely to get demoted, and if he doesn't get demoted, then he's just going to make you sad when you pull him as a 5-star, because the dude doesn't really have that much good fodder, like at all. Are we really going to celebrate when we get steady posture? I don't know. Anyways, if you want to try to use him as a support unit, which isn't too bad if you're filling out the green role on your team, and especially on a beast team, combine them with like Naesala or Tibarn in the future, who knows, with whatever other beast units we may end up getting. 4-5 beast, Blaze Dance, kind of doing the same thing as his sister, but actually having a color, so that means it's easier to use them to combat blue units. But I say easier, but the dude has like mid-40s attack at best, maybe 50 with some buffs, and that's really not that good, so. If you want to use them in a mixed team comp, and again, this is the problem with mixed team comps, is you can't really take advantage of a unit being beside him at the beginning of a turn because he won't get his 3 mobility, then you do want to use stuff like Attack, Tactic, or Guidance where you can set up some good mobility plays that way. I don't really have much to say. Like Racin is going to be a good unit, but he's going to do some stuff that's like characters like NY Azura already do. Honestly speaking, I think his most noticeable comparison, at least in terms of stat spread, is somebody like Indigo. Again, another dancer from the PA banner. I want to give special mention to NY Azura also being similar to Racin, but NY Azura does have some attack. They're both a little similar there, but I want to give special mention to Indigo because I just haven't really touched on him in a long time. The thing I want to talk about with Indigo is the fact that he's ranged, that he can use something like Gronowl and actually have a better combat potential than somebody like Racin can as a result of this. So the dude with some Gronowl, attack, defense, bonds, even defense waves, furies and such, bonfires, the dude can be nuking for like 20 damage or so, which is pretty good. Yeah, his attack stats not so great, but you know, that's why he can at least have the choice of using something like that. Refinable weapons, really good, and just being able to bulk a specific stat like that makes you much better. because of a weapon like Ronel. I'm not saying that Indigo's better, it's just you have these options, possibly, so just take a second look at them. Alright, next up is Nyla. Okay, so we didn't know about Nailah's stats yesterday when I looked at the video impressions, and to be totally honest with you guys, I'm not impressed. I'm really not. Nailah's stats are disappointing because for somebody that's supposed to use Null Disrupt, she has terrible res. So terrible res is not doing you any favors when you want to be taking hits from stuff like Veronica, from possibly some AoE mages, those that get followed up in AR. So like, let's say you take a Veronica hit. You kill Veronica because you have Null C Disrupt, but then Ophelia is like in the back, gets gray waves, gets into range of Nyla, and she's dead because her res is gonna be 19. So it's not good. I'm really disappointed with, like, a distant counter user should have some res. She has good speed, she has good attack, she has good defense. So Nyla's gonna be good at tackling melee fire sweep users, and that's without a doubt because she's got the defense for it, she's got good speed, and she'll do it fine because she'll nuke them back with stuff like Moonbow. So honestly speaking, you don't really need to change much on her kit. She's again going to be really good, but I see her filling out that kind of like tanky role to take care of those sort of things, especially in AR. You take multiple units hitting your face, get into like brazen attack res range, bump up your res a little bit, up to like 30, attack smoke to possibly reduce some of the damage you take. The thing is, her bulk isn't really too good, and that's the biggest weakness of her. Like a super Bane in HP just hurts her. She goes down to 59 HP, and that's not really that great. So again, I'm just honestly not too impressed. I think she'll be really good, but just in sort of like a way that's specific to the type of units you counter, not specific to catching all units when you want to use a tank like this. I was really hoping to have like a decent rest stat on Nyla, but it just didn't end up being the case. Again, Shove is there for the same reason it was on Tibarn earlier, which is go away because I want to transform the next turn. Another way you can use Nyla if you don't end up seeing too many fire sweep users or healers with Dazzle is a decent distant counter vantage build. Again, getting into the brazen attack res range, using distant counter vantage savage blow, she can pull this off pretty well. Kind of like Akariss, it's not super consistent because you don't always have your special available. Like if you get through multiple engagements, you're not always going to have the special up, so it's not extremely consistent, but it's a good option because most units that have distant counter advantage can get some pretty good value out of it, especially when you combine brazen attack and res and savage blow out of it. All right, and finally, my favorite unit of all time, he's back. So we have Oscar here. Again, has a fairly similar stat spread to Nyla, with him actually matching her speed because of a refine on Slaying Lance, or close to it. I think it's close. It's about 34, 35, 36 or so before you consider something like Fury. So the point of Oscar is again to have that player phase perspective where Nyla is kind of oriented towards, I think, more of an enemy phase style because of the way her distant counter and null skills base work. To really make Nyla more aggressive, you may want to consider other things like Gale Force and possibly Flashing Blade. She can use Flashing Blade, so that's pretty cool. But beyond that, I mean, Oscar's going to play that aggressive blue melee unit role. And in fact, having more range because of 3 movements. So yeah, as always, I'm going to give a shout out to Oscar because he really does. He's a really consistent unit. And if you don't have him already, you should probably consider it. I personally use Parry because I value the res over the defense. But if you want a good unit. Okay, next up, it's our bad boy Naesala. So Naesala's pretty cool because his stat spread is interesting for like a blue flyer, especially one that's a GHB. He has decent res, really good speed, decent attack, and a lowish HP, which I can actually consider more of an advantage than a disadvantage because it lets you hit certain thresholds on HP skills better. What is more interesting though is the skills he does come with, which aren't shown here, which is Swift Sparrow and Guard. And his weapon is similar to what Giga Nino has and what Carla has. So as long as he has more speed than other units, he gets up to 7 damage, up to a maximum of a 10 speed difference. So that's really good for him because he's getting some really solid, consistent damage. I think as a free unit, this guy is going to be one of the best ones we get. So I'm definitely considering using him in a lot of things, and even in team comps that aren't specifically beast comps, because the thing is, if you use something like shove, which I showed before, you can still take advantage of that 3 movement mobility by positioning him in a way that's like, okay, I'm gonna enemy phase this, like if you don't use Swift Sparrow, of course, and then next turn I'm gonna have mobility to go snipe something else. And using something like Fury, for instance, because Fury's on dual phases, you could pull that off pretty well, and then he'd enter HP thresholds really easy due to having low HP. So Swift Sparrow's not bad. If you want to just keep it budget, he really just needs to change out Guard for something like Desperation, because Guard, I see Guard as more of a enemy phase skill when you want to just deny specials that hit you. It's not necessarily bad on player phase, especially if you attack into a unit that may have like a 1-charge special, but necessarily you probably want to stick to something like Desperation. Really works well with him. Scales awesome with his weapon, so Sparrow, give him like an attack speed seal, and you're really giving him all the stats he wants. Okay, and probably kind of like the penultimate build that we can talk about for Naesala, and I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing you'll get, but it's pretty good as an option. You can kind of use them on both phases here, but more focused on the enemy phase, and that's going to be taking advantage of Brazen Attack Speed from Linus and Attack Speed Bond, which was recently released. So if you give him a lot of speed, it scales off of his weapon. If you give him something like Vantage, the damage is just straight up good without relying on a special. And of course, Speed Smoke is something from Fallen Tsukumi if you really want to add salt to the wound and make sure he outspeeds everything. That's about it for what I would consider useful on Naesala. I wanted to mention like Gale Force as a possibility for him, but the thing with that is I don't actually consider his attack too good to be using Heavy Blade. If he was able to use Flashing Blade, I think Gale Force would be pretty interesting, but since he can't use that, it's going to be really difficult to make his attack consistent enough to use something like Heavy Blade, especially when you consider like Hone Flyers means you take away his mobility combined with other flyers, or you'd have to rely on like Leanne giving him Hone Beast, which I guess is pretty canon. Okay, so that pretty much covers my thoughts on the units and some possible builds. I want to take a look at summarizing the whole banner and honestly my thoughts on it, maybe some goals and things to consider for whether you should pull for these units or not. So the biggest thing about this particular banner is that they introduced new game mechanics. They're unique, they're probably fun, but I am going to really summarize it all by saying it's awkward. Okay, I can definitely predict from this point on that if you want to like get these units and then just dump them on your team, that's where it gets weird. Stand alone, they're strong, they're good, they're useful. But that's the thing, you don't play Fire Emblem Heroes with 1 unit, you play it with 4 or 8 if you play Grand Conquest or Rival Domains. So that's where things get weird, and mobility is going to become a problem because you're just not taking advantage of it. Now, if you do have dragons already invested, or you plan to get all of them, which is a hefty orb cost, then you can probably create some pretty cool teams with them. But that's what we got to talk about. How much of an investment do you really need to do to get these units? So green is the lowest cost, as it always has been. It's the least saturated pool. As you can see from the mathematics, an average amount of orb cost to get Racin is 142 orbs. But a 90th percentile, meaning 1 in 10 people take about 315 orbs to get Racin. Please don't pull Racin. More importantly, red is the really, really saturated pool, and that's where Tibarn is, and he's also pretty popular as a unit, so I know a lot of people may want him. But it is more difficult to get them. You're looking at about an average about 180 orbs, which is almost 40 more than green. And 1 in 10 people spend 400 orbs for Tibarn. That is not efficient. I mean, that is probably more than the amount of orbs we get in a month. So you got to prepare to either save a lot of orbs or spend a lot of money to get him. So be careful. He's not that good to warrant 400 orbs in my opinion. He's cool. He's a popular unit, but honestly, like, are you really going to use him more than some invested units you may already have that might be red? That's the question to ask. So blue has Nyla in it, and this is probably the most important thing, because especially if you're looking for distant counter or possibly the new Null C, expect to spend maybe about 164 orbs. That is reasonable. I'm personally going to be targeting Nyla because I need that null skill for competitive reasons. Like if you're in the high tiers of AR, tier 20 to tier 21, you do need it. There's a lot of fire sweep stuff there, and if you don't have this skill, it makes beating those comps really difficult without losses. Beyond that, I think Leanne is probably like a really good unit, especially for the future. Being colorless means that she's always going to have neutral matchups, and she comes with decent fodder. Like even if you don't kind of like need her, Flyer Formation is still going to be really good fodder, and the price for orbs on that isn't too bad compared to somebody like Tibarn. So if you're looking to like spend orbs here or tickets, definitely look at like blue for Nyla, just flexibility of the fodder being a decent unit as well. And colorless is pretty good if you need Flyer Formation, or just a dancer who could be really good in the future with new beast units that may come out. Tibarn has that sturdy impact skill. That's really the extent of it. I don't think anything else in particular is gonna really make him useful, and I don't think sturdy impact is really worth pulling for unless you want to create some really annoying, let's say, AR defense teams or something. It's more of an enemy skill than it is really a player skill, because any unit that wants to use that skill would probably prefer DB4, for instance, just for more damage. That's pretty much it on what I think. Do remember this banner is 30 days long, so you have a long time to think about it. It's going to overlap with Legendary Banner and possibly the seasonals that may come later, and it probably will overlap with the anniversary. So my suggestion, wait. Spend your tickets, do your free summons, but wait, because you may end up regretting summons you do here that you never know may happen come anniversary. Like new units that may even be more cool, like cooler than this, or maybe some new game mechanics, maybe summoning pool changes where you may want to spend your orbs on that. So that would be the solution here. If you're competitive, blue's the way to go, and honestly, I'm going to be suffering trying to go there. That's about it, guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below which one of these characters you plan to at least consider getting in the future, or possibly now, and what sort of things you're going to use them for. Sub to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, weapon refine analysis coming up. Peace.